Awesome. And as a matter of fact, we have a bunch of prizes to give away that are going to be tied to a Twitter hashtag or any hashtag. What was the hashtag again, Josh? You're the one who came up with it. What was that hashtag that we're working with?
Do you remember? Is it at Rapid City Comic?
No, or wait, it could be at sartanacomicbook.com.
Oh, sorry.
This is starting off well.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most important things in making indie comics is to rely on your fellow indie comics creators.
To tell you
when you do
signs
things like forget the hashtag or your own name.
You're right. Yeah. Who am I? What's the hashtag? I believe it was NECC Indie Panel.
NECC Indie Panel.
Yep. So if you want any questions, you can hashtag through there. We'll find you and retroactively send out prizes. But if you have any questions, we'll get to that later on. So after we've done these introductions, I kind of want to kick it off with how we got started. And maybe we'll start with Josh and come down the line. So basically, how'd you get started? What was the beginning for you in this venture, in this path?
Okay, so this specific thing, Rapid City, as I'm sure we'll all kind of say, has like 100 different roots. A long time ago, I wanted to write about music, but I don't know about music, so I wrote about superheroes. A bunch of different stuff. This project came about because, I'm gonna go dark here.
Go dark.
A good friend of mine's girlfriend died suddenly for no reason. Super tragic. I'd never met the girl, but here I am talking to the horrible thing, and it was one of those moments where I realized I could die at any minute. Anyone could die at any minute. If I want comics with my name on them, I have to make them today. And
that should be the ad campaign for comics in general. Comics, you could die tomorrow.
Get your ass to work.
Right on. Bob?
So, yeah, I went to college for writing. I always wanted to be a writer, and I hit some writer's block. I was publishing prose and poetry. I hit some writer's block, and I just started conceptualizing characters that were going out to clean up space. And eventually, I started giving them backstories and putting them together in a crew where they went out and cleaned up a hostile galaxy. But I wanted to make sure that it wasn't that they were rebels, they weren't explorers, they were just blue-collar workers out there with the same goals that all of us have to, make some money, retire. It's just that they have a very dangerous job out in space.
So like I said, I work mostly in movies and TV, so there's always ideas rattling around in my head, luckily. And I was born in Boston, but lived in LA for about 25 years, and then a few years ago we decided to move back east to raise my daughter on the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast, for semi-obvious reasons. But I still wanted to be able to create stuff, and I especially still wanted a way to work with a lot of my artist and writer friends in Los Angeles, even though I wasn't going to be there. So for me, that's where comic books really came in. I'd grown up as a huge fan of them and a collector, but I hadn't really focused on them for that 25-year period until I got back here, and then all of a sudden, it was fantastic to be able to have Brandon McKinney, who's my lead board artist on Transformers, do the Doberman book, or do the Bruce Lee book, or work with other writers and artists, friends of mine. So it's a way for me to keep my hand in my friendship pool in Los Angeles, because I have a very small circle of trust. And also, as a creative outlet, that doesn't mean I have to be in Los Angeles, 300 days a year.
For me, it was more about, number one, I'm the artist in the lineup here. So I came from it from a little bit of a different perspective. I grew up basically with a pencil in my hand all the time. Whenever I could doodle on anything, I would. My math book in second grade had more, doodles than actual math equations in it. And, you're always kind of looking for something to draw, looking for an outlet. My brother brought home one polybag stuffed with the 12-issue Secret Wars.
Oh, cool.
And, we'd grown up watching, Lou Ferrigno Knows the Hulk, and Red Brown downstairs is Captain America, Death Too Soon. And, suddenly I had something compelling to draw. So, my brother and I suddenly, started this whole journey of being comic book fans. And when you have a creative type mindset, like all of us have, you can't get into a genre of anything without immediately starting to wonder how you do it and what you do, and starting to create the things that you enjoy reading yourself.
Which, by the way, is sometimes a curse.
Sometimes. No, yeah, sometimes it's a curse, but sometimes it actually works out quite nicely. And you know, we as we were kind of maturing, the comic book industry was as well. So we started getting into a point where the kinds of books that we read when we got into it were becoming more and more rare. Obviously, there's, you know, since The Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns, things have taken a darker turn in the comic industry, and a lot of the light, you know, kind of fluffy, fun stuff started to disappear. So what the first book that we put out is a book called Laserman, which is still our kind of flagship title. And the entire point of that, if it sounds silly, it's literally supposed to. We wanted at first for it to be a parody of, you know, the tropes of superhero fiction.
Well, that's how TMNT started. It was a parody of Daredevil.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
exactly.
hand, foot, stick, splinter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, hell, he was in it. The guy who got hit on the side of the face, that was the Retro Mutant News that also made the Turtles.
Right.
So, in case you guys are at a trivia night, you know, that's a free beer. If you know me.
It's a pro tip.
Exactly.
Comic-Con fun facts.
Exactly. But we started out in the first trade paperback is really kind of a parody of the superhero genre. And what happened is we began to realize as we were working on this over the course of like 20 years, the thing that we were parodying was suddenly in very, very short supply. And there really weren't any lighthearted superheroes. They'd all been rebooted, New 52'd, Ultimated, whatever. And suddenly, instead of Laserman being this parody, he started to move towards being the flag bearer, really the torch bearer for those kinds of comics. So really, my creative journey started as wanting to emulate the books that I liked, and then as those books disappeared, continue the tradition of the books that are no longer made anymore.
Right on, right on. So I got my start. Originally, I started doing short films, a web series called Vulgarity, the series, with a bunch of friends of mine. It was actually kind of inspired by the Monkees. And only at a Comic-Con could you actually have Batman and a monkey walk by casually during your panel. So Vulgarity, the series, was just a brother and sister band that would get into misadventures, and then they'd end the episode with a music video. And it was just an outlet for me to just get my creative side out there, and it was fun. But then I increasingly found it hard to do these video productions just by gathering a crew together, working, you know, basically for free on the weekends. It was a lot of sacrifice. You know, I found that I had all these great ideas that I really couldn't accomplish for video. That when I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2012, I decided to try to produce a comic book. So that's actually Clark and Five is the book I've been trying to make forever. And I met an artist who I was flipping through their portfolio, and they had some really nice gunslinger pieces, and I've always wanted to make a Western, but I live in Massachusetts, so filming a Western is not really conducive. So I said, you know, this might actually be a better comic book. So I started, you know, on that path, and I started collaborating with Joe Arnold Art, if you're out there watching. And Joe's a great artist, and I was lucky to have him work with me and collaborate with me up front to put out Sartana. And that kind of just kickstarted things and put me on the path of being able to exercise my ideas out of my system without having to really struggle to put together a video or film crew and all that stuff. Not to say that making comics is easier, but it was easier for me at that point.
I actually think that's worth hitting a little harder, is that certain parts of the entertainment business, the creative outlets, you kind of need to be in a place. You kind of need to be in LA or New York if you want to work in movies and television, but in comics, you can actually be anywhere, and there's an incredible group of artists and writers and creatives on the East Coast.
It's liberating.
It's liberating, and a big part of, I think an important part of it all is the community of that group of artists, and you'll find that a lot of us end up working together one way or another, or 7 degrees of separation or whatever it might be. But if you're getting started, if you're getting in, you know, those kind of first few people you work with and little team you put together becomes really important, and there is an incredible resource here on the East Coast that you may not realize until you dig into going to some cons or getting onto some social media and talking to people.
There's also a bit of crossover between the two medium.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, storyboard artists, you know, are essentially doing the same thing that comic book artists do for the most part, with a little bit of a different visual language. And obviously scripting works very much the same way. And what was the other? a lot of different things that kind of, oh, concept art, that was the other thing I was gonna mention, concept art, all of these things, you know, in the early stages really operate the same way that they do in film.
One of the other things, talking about how when you're doing comic book, and if you think about whether to do it film or in a comic book, one of the best things when I first started doing comic books was somebody said to me the gap between you and the best when doing a movie is so far separated. You write a movie script, to get that in front of Ridley Scott is impossible. But if you start doing comic books, you're at a comic book convention that other professional comic book creators are attending as well. They could easily walk past your booth and they see your art, and they're if they're brought in by your art, they pick up your comic book, and then the next thing you know, you could be talking to somebody like Jeff Klein. And
Not
it's
No, you won't be.
but
I hear he's a jerk.
yeah, but it's you're the gap between you and the best in comic book can be very close, and there's much more opportunity that could present itself if you're going to work hard at it and you're going to put yourself out there, rather than doing movies. Not to say like if you have a movie idea, don't do the movie, but it's something to consider if you are thinking about doing it in a comic book version. There's some benefits to that could be, that could really help you out.
There's a much smaller barrier to entry with comics than a lot of that. You don't need to rely on anyone else. You don't need to go to another place to get money. You can do it on your own and get it done and have a thing that's your comic.
Especially nowadays.
Which Josh actually had a successful Kickstarter earlier this week.
Yes,
And
I did.
We'll get into that a little bit later. I do have crowdsourcing as one of the topics, but I just wanted to actually tag that and put a cap on that last idea. Was that you can write a spec script for a film, and that can sit in your portfolio and never get made. But you could write a comic book script, and you could find the right artist, and then a couple months later, that thing is real, and you're holding it, and you can share it with people, and they get more out of it.
Especially with current technology too. That's I don't know if this is something we're going to touch on, but honestly, when we started, it was literally going to Staples and shrinking your 11 by 17 pages down to published size, and then painting them with Dr. Martin's watercolor dyes and hand lettering and
how about putting original art in a folder and mailing it across the country to someone who would take a pen and write letters on it and then mail it to somewhere else where they will print it.
Exactly, and these advances have made it so that skill level is really the only thing you're fighting against now.
Which is a secret hidden problem that no barrier of entry, I'm going negative all of a sudden, that having no barrier of entry also means that there's a less of...
You want to say it? There's a lot of crap, because anybody can play, there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of...
Yeah.
On the flip side to that, though, it's like you have to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
So it's like a lot of that crap where people are just trying to get started. And, and that's maybe their first project. Their fifth one might be the next big hit.
And we've all seen that, where somebody comes up to you at a convention one year with some crap, but they love it, and then the next year they come back and it's great, and next year they come back and they're working with someone else, and they're better than you and selling better than you, and then the next year they come back. I told them to go away last year.
No, and to say that, I mean, just at this Comic-Con right now, I see people that are tabling that, 3 years ago came by with their book bag, and talking to me about their project, and me telling them like, it's so important to do comic conventions, and then you come to a comic convention, you see they have a table and it's huge, they got a banner, and you're just proud of them, that to see that they, that they're working hard and they're out there trying to do it. And
thank you, Bob.
and you mentioned this earlier. That's another big part of this is the access to people in the comic community is much different than the access to people in the TV, movie, even publishing of books.
Yeah.
You go to a con, just about anybody who's sitting behind a table will talk to just about anybody, and that's not the case if you want to break into television and you're trying to get to Shonda Rhimes or whatever. It's just not the way it works.
Hey, Gary, you're at a 10. I need you at a 5.
Gary doesn't have a 5.
Here come the judge.
This 5 is my 10.
There you go.
Free parking.
But
Free parking.
when we
Electric
actually,
shoes.
When we actually get to crowdfunding and things like that, it was something I was going to bring up there, but it kind of segues a little bit, because I do think that, and I'll talk about this more when we get to it, but Kickstarter and crowdfunding in general is almost a natural market leveler for what Josh was talking about, where there, you know, if you go on to, no offense towards them at all, like an Indie Planet, where anybody can put their books up there, you have to wade through a lot of stuff to find stuff that really, there's a lot of crap. But, you know, when you go into Kickstarter, there is literally a market cap on it where if you put up, so you can put up anything you want to, but if enough people aren't interested in giving you their money for it, then, you know, the market kind of sorts itself out. The crap is going to drop off, and the things that get successfully funded are the things that appeal to enough people that they're worth making.
Well, let's skip ahead and jump to crowdsourcing because we're kind of on it. So really, I mean, it kind of divides creators. I've noticed some people are for it and it works really well for them. Some people are against it. They kind of use it as a last resort. Let's just kind of go down the line and maybe give a little bit of insight into your personal experiences. Start with Josh. You just had a successful one with Rapid City.
Yeah, I'm on my second successful Kickstarter right now. It's really weird and scary. I was a little bit against it for a while because it seemed like just going out and asking for money, which a little bit it is. But it's a great audience builder. It's a great way to invigorate your audience. And once you, giving advice, if you're doing a Kickstarter, contribute to Kickstarters. You don't understand them until you buy into them, because as with anything, if you donate to public radio, all of a sudden you feel like, that's my radio station. I bought that, I own that now. And you feel like a part of it. And it's just it just happens. So that is actually something that the Kickstarter is providing for your audience. And this is me talking about what I'm giving to my audience by taking their money. But what it really does, they're buying into something. They're a part of this thing now. And that is a lot of what we live off of, right? Having people who read my comic and love my comic are great. People who read my comic and talk about my comic are the best.
But doesn't that tie into the idea that most successful Kickstarters require ongoing two-way communication? You've got to be continually updating your pool on what's going on and where you are, and even if you're going to be late, let them know. Don't make them wonder.
Hell yes.
So it's a lot of time and energy after. You've raised the money, that's great, but now there's still a lot of work for you, separate from making the book. There's still a lot of work for you in that Kickstarter.
I'm gonna hold the mic for one more minute because I'm still
I
out there.
have a follow-up question specifically for you. Your Kickstarter was very unique. I haven't seen it done before where you didn't forge a single page.
It's either really smart or really stupid.
I like it though. No, it's
On
great.
the first day it felt really smart. Right now it feels really stupid.
No. But the thing I saw from my perspective was that you then now hit for the page successfully on the first day, and then now you had bonus options. So you were over exceeding what your goal was, and now you found yourself funding additional pages on the initial campaign.
Right.
I thought that was very smart, and I thought that was very unique. I hadn't seen that done before.
The thing, yes, so what it is, to simplify, if you've used Kickstarter, you're familiar with stretch goals, which is once something reaches 100%, it can go beyond, and if it's an action figure, you'll get a set with extra toys or something like that. Yeah. So for mine, I made my goal $100 to fund page number 6 of Rapid City Below Zero, issue number 5. And once that got funded, it opened up the stretch goal to fund page number 7, and then page number 8 and 9, and so on. So hopefully it'll go there. The thing that, Jeff, what you were talking about the crowd engagement, with the thing that's about to start going on, and I think some of you might already know about it, is our pages are made in the Rapid City exclusive studio, which means anyone who has contributed can go onto Facebook and they'll see where Sean Langley and I do our our collaboration. Which means instead of emailing back and forth about a page, Sean posts, he scans the work and posts it directly to Facebook. So if I'm doing something else, if I'm eating lunch, other people will see the original artwork before I do and start to comment on it. And that's the page, that's the work. So that's like I'm saying, no, you have her wearing street clothes. She needs to be wearing her supervillain costume. You have this going on. And like all the back and forth of the hard parts of collaboration are going on right in front of everybody. When we originally launched it, we had it sort of snooty where Sean and I could contribute, but you guys can just watch. Now it's like the doors are open. So sometimes I'll be like, you need to change that. And some of the contributors will be like, no, I think it looks fine. And
this is my comic.
Yeah, I don't be like, well, fan, you're wrong. But I'm like, well, Sean, just listen to me, all right?
Yeah, part of it's getting rid of that prison lunch mentality where you're protecting your food. You don't want anybody, don't take my pudding. You know what I mean? But when you open source it and you bring people in, like Chris just said, you're part of the entertainment is seeing the process and seeing it come
entertaining
to
on
life.
two levels at that point, which
Right.
is, honestly, it's funny because this kind of cuts back to just general promoting all around. When I first met Josh, I don't remember if this was the day that I met you or shortly after we had seen you somewhere else, but it was New York Comic Con, about 2009, maybe 2010. All right, we walked by his table, and we were trying to kind of get into the indie community. So, we're like, okay, this looks like, we felt that this was like hopefully the level that we were trying for that, it's independently produced, but it looks professional. So we were like, all right, let's talk to him and see what this is. And we're like, okay, so how much for this? And he just looks at me and goes, how much do you want to give me for it? I was like, what?
Talking to me?
And honestly, we walked away. We were like, it's weird because it challenged us. And we literally, me and my brother walked out. He doesn't know this yet. And we were like, is this guy for real? Did he just, what the hell?
I think he just called you the Travis Bickle of the comic industry.
No, hold on, I'm getting to that. I was like, he put us on the spot. He made us he challenged he challenged the process to the point where we were talking about it. Everything, like at dinner, we were like, and that guy's like, I didn't know what to say to him. Did you know what to say to him? I don't know what to say to him. What if you offer him too little? What if you offer him too much?
That was a trick I had to do because my art was late and I had to print at a cost that I could not possibly make a profit on to make it to the show.
But I'll tell you, that was a blessing in disguise because what it boiled down to, and I came to this realization about 2 days later, is that we're still talking about it. We remember him in a sea of New York Comic Con.
Real tough place to get an audience.
This quirky interaction stood out from all the others, and from then on, we knew who Josh Dahl was. When he launched his Kickstarter, and I was tagged, Johnny tagged me in the link. And I looked at it as like, 1 page? I was like, he did it again. Heard of. So I mean, from promotion like
that. Hashtag he did it again.
It was out of the box thinking, and I mean, we are now devoting time in a panel talking about this.
Right. There you go. Yep. Round of applause for Josh on that one.
Yeah,
Bob, crowdsourcing.
I'm all for crowdsourcing. I wouldn't be able to do salvagers or anything else I do in a timely manner without it because you're funding it yourself. It's taking weeks. You gotta put food on the table. You gotta buy clothes and all that. So in order to give your artists money to do the things that you're doing, it really would take so long to do it. The way I look at it, Kickstarter, and there was an article about it saying that Kickstarter is actually the 3rd largest publisher, for comic books. As long as you're giving something, I don't think of it as taking money from people or asking money from people. I'm giving you something. I'm giving you something exclusive. I'm giving you it at a fair price, and you're also a part of this process. I'm not doing it like where Josh is, but you do feel ownership. We do an executive producers page. So if you contributed, you are going to be on that executive producer page because you are an executive producer. You've helped fund the comic book, and you're getting exclusive material. You're going to get posters, anything out there that's a quality that you wouldn't get in a store. But basically, that's what Kickstarter is. It's it's saying to somebody, here's my product on a shelf, and these are the levels that you can either pay this much for it, you can pay this much and get this, you can pay even more money and get original artwork. It's however much you want to pay to get products that you might want to, that you want to hang on your wall, or if you want a T-shirt or a mug. But it's bringing the store to you, social media wise. And so I know that there are people out there that look at Kickstarter and they don't agree with it. But I think if it's done right, it's just basically like you are putting your product out there for somebody to buy it, like they would anywhere else, like they would at a comic book shop. So I'm all for Kickstarters. Just like Josh said, if you're going to do Kickstarters, you should contribute to Kickstarters. I do that not just to support the indie community, but I also am very interested to see what's out there and the projects that other indie creators are doing. So I'm always backing Kickstarters. Usually I'm backing on the digital level because I'm in a 2-bedroom apartment right now, so my wife would not be too happy if I just had stacks and stacks of comic books. But eventually, I do want to get those printed copies, but I love seeing what the other people in the indie community are doing. I love seeing the artwork, the storytelling that they're doing. So yeah, crowdfunding is a blessing. It's awesome when you're doing it. It's the worst 30 days of your life.
Anxiety ridden.
You know,
The middle 15 is just suicidal.
The last Kickstarter I did, I told my wife, I said, for the next 30 days, I'm not a dad, I'm not a father, I'm committed to this. You have to answer people back, and Jeff was saying, you have to interact with these people constantly. Right now, to go back what Jeff was saying before, when you're late, I'm actually going into I'm 2.5 months late on my last Kickstarter, but I'm constantly giving updates to people.
I'm still waiting for those books. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it's gut-wrenching because you feel like, how many fans am I losing with each passing week that I don't, give them something? But I am constantly updating. I'm constantly interacting with people to let them know that we are working toward it, and and that we haven't forgotten them, and that they do have product
book,
coming.
Bob, if you deliver your book on time, they get a book in their hand the same way they would from Marvel or Dark Horse or whatever. But if you deliver a book 2 weeks late, along with a, hey Mike, listen, I'm sorry this was late. Me and the artist working really hard on it. Here's your book. You built a fan relationship.
Well,
by being late.
I waited 3.5 years for the second part of Kevin Smith's Spider-Man story, so.
Damn.
Yeah, that Ultimate Hulk versus Wolverine. That it was like a 3-year gap to finish. You know what I mean? It's like he ripped Wolverine in half. What happens next? 3 years later. Jeff, crowdsourcing. Have you done any of it?
We haven't. The other way to think of Kickstarter is a lot of businesses depend on pre-sales before they go into production on something. So it's a movie that's trying to sell pre-sales international to see if they can fund their movie, or Procter & Gamble, who are checking with grocery stores for pre-sales on a certain kind of toothpaste or whatever it is. Pre-sales are a really typical part of most businesses. So Kickstarter is really no different. You get a sense of whether there's a market for your product or not, and if you weren't able to raise your money for Kickstarter, you may not go forward with your product. You may still do it, but you may not. So I think conceptually, morally, there's nothing you can complain about Kickstarter. For us, it's interesting. As a publisher, I'm on the fence about it. I feel like Kickstarter kind of belongs to the creators, and that the experience that the funders want is that kind of one-on-one with the creators. And that I've seen publishers do it. Now, Archie did it very unsuccessfully not that long ago, but asked for way too much money and some other stuff. But we've toyed with the idea of, if we went on as a publisher and we're trying to raise money for a mini-series or something, would it be embraced, or would there be a little bit of, well, you guys aren't the artist and the writer, you're the publisher, why are you asking for money? Yeah. And I'm actually really curious, because we go back and forth internally on this quite a bit. We've targeted projects that we've seen on Kickstarter, and we've come in, like there's a book we sell downstairs right now called Sidekicked, which was a Kickstarter project. He was teetering on whether he was going to make his money or not. We liked it so much we said, whether you make your money or not, we'll publish that. And we've done that a couple of times, actually. So we'll do that, but we haven't gone on with our own book yet, because I worry whether that's really what Kickstarter, what the people who use it want it for. I don't know.
And it's funny, to go off comic books, I remember Zach Braff did a Kickstarter for a movie that he did, and there was so much backlash on that, because people were saying, like, you are in the movie industry, right. You should be taking this to like studios. So, and then I think the girl that did Veronica Mars did it too.
Yeah,
so
Super Troopers 2 had, I guess, one of the biggest Kickstarters ever. They funded the sequel and then some.
But I feel like that's a little different. Somehow the Super Trooper guys, they're the group that makes the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they are.
And thing with Mystery Science Theater, which broke all records.
Exactly.
It was literally Joel going to the fans, and it was embraced a million times over.
And I think that those people, there is a difference, or maybe there's not, but we just perceive there's a difference between Zach Braff and Christine Bell. You assume that they can raise the money some other way. Maybe they can't. Maybe it wasn't fair. Maybe Zach really did need to go crowdfunding to get his movie made. Yeah. But you think because you know those names that they have other channels to get that money. And that's why I wonder if the perception would be that as a publisher, even though, quite honestly, we lose money on every book we publish, pretty much. Is there a perception that, oh, well, they've got plenty of money, they don't need help on Kickstarter to fund projects? I don't know.
Cool. All right, so we kind of did the crowdsourcing thing. Let me circle back to kind of where we.
Before we do,
Oh,
can
yeah,
I
sure.
I just really want to make a point
Start
about
right
this, because
here.
this is actually what
Yeah.
I was, well, I talk so much, you assume I have my time. But the point that I want to bring up is actually something that I was talking to my brother about this morning, and the minute I said it, I'm like, honestly, that's the one thing that if I get to talk about, I wanted to talk about
Yeah,
here.
shoot.
So, and it ties into what all these guys are saying and adds another dimension to it. For those who've been in this industry or know about the industry or did research in the industry from maybe 15 years ago, the entire process was different because the technology hadn't brought us to where we are now. So what would happen in the old days is you would put a book together, your creative team, you'd invest a lot of money into it. You would then submit to the only
Or man hours. I mean, the key is
right.
you're either putting money or man hours in. So the one thing I do want to mention all this is chances are, for most comic book creators, there's some other job they're doing to make money as well, simultaneously. Very few writers or artists can make their living doing comic books compared to the number of people who want to work in it or who actually are working in it. So just know that for, I have no idea what you guys do.
Yeah.
Business.tomtom.com.
But for most creators, there's only a core group who can truly make a good living working for Marvel, DC, Image. Everybody else is probably doing it because they're passionate about it and love it, and are doing it along with whatever.
I heard recently there's more people living off of professional basketball than professional comic books.
So think about that for a second.
It blows my mind when kids are, making more
no,
money than I am at playing League of Legends. You know what I mean? It's
that's true.
What's wrong here?
So where I was going with that is this. Well, the way that it would work is you'd spend the time, the money, the man hours, whatever it is, to get the book done. Then you would submit to the only way in the day that you could get your comic out there was submitting to Diamond's previews. Diamond previews would look over it and they'd say, yeah, we're going to put it in the catalog. No, we're not.
Diamond is the distributor that services all the comic book stores.
Right. So you put it in there,
comics.
and then what they do is they'd solicit it, and it was a monthly publication, so they'd solicit it for 30 days, and they'd get comic book stores saying, yes, I'd like to order Salvagers #1. They'd compile the orders. If you hit the order minimum, they would say, okay, you've sold 1,000 copies. Here's an order for 1,000 copies. You would then say, great, I got a guarantee from Diamond I'm going to get paid for these. And you would go, well, in theory.
Right.
And you
Because
would
in
go,
theory, comic books are not returnable.
right. You would go and use that money to print the books, and then you'd send it to Diamond, and they distribute it. So if you didn't hit that order minimum, they'd just say, okay, all the orders are canceled because you didn't make it. Enter Kickstarter, which was really meant to get people off their feet, but let's talk about for a minute what it became. Now the process is this. I make my comic book, I put it on Kickstarter, and instead of going through Diamond, instead of Diamond soliciting it to comic book stores, now I am personally, through Kickstarter, soliciting it to all my potential readers. If I get enough minimum orders, then I get the money from them and I go and print it and I deliver it to them. If I don't, then it gets canceled. It's virtually the same system, only it's now in our hands.
Correct. Well, and the truth of Diamond is, now because the technology has changed and the barrier to entry is so much lower, Diamond turns down a concept, a whole bunch of books. It's not like now they put everything up for pre-order and whatever hits and whatever doesn't.
Yeah.
You can't get into Diamond at the beginning in a lot of cases. They pick and choose the ones that you're even willing to put into the catalog. So for a lot of creators, your only chance at wider distribution beyond the con market is really the Kickstarter or some other social media.
My most recent Kickstarter, which was for Vindication Volume 1, the issues 1 through 3 of Vindication, we, in the second day, got a $500 bump up from someone we had never heard of before. Wasn't friends with us on social media, wasn't a Facebook friend with us. He was just browsing the indie comic tab of Kickstarter. And when you're, again, 15 years ago, if you wanted to look for indie comics, you'd have to go to the store, or I knew people who would buy the previews catalog and start looking through. There's now a place that a lot of people are going, and nobody really talks about this, is they go to Kickstarter to look for the new interesting projects. They back the ones that they want to back. If it gets produced, great, they take my money. If it doesn't, oh well, we're not going to get charged. And Kickstarter has become, whether it was intended that way to be that way or not, it has become, as far as I'm concerned, the best place in the world to go see what new indie comics are cooking and to make your purchases straight through there to be sent to your door. And that's kind of, again, I don't think it's what Kickstarter intended Kickstarter to be, but they're certainly not turning away our money. So. I see it as a pre-order engine. I see it as a distribution engine. I see it as a publisher, all wrapped up with one bow on it. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're not using Kickstarter, that's like in the old days saying, oh, I'm not going to submit to Diamond or do comic conventions.
But again, because they are in some ways the new Diamond,
Exactly.
an additional Diamond, that means there's a lot of people with a lot of projects every week. So you need to figure out some way to make yours special.
So the next question I have is my "Where were you when Kennedy was shot?" kind of question. It's the culmination of
Am
an
I the only one
idea.
old enough to actually have a memory of this?
So the culmination of an idea. I know writers here, it happens to them. I'm driving down 95 and the idea strikes. And you have to get it down or you have to get it on paper. And just kind of maybe what do you do in that scenario and where were you with the culmination of the idea for your current books? If you want to just go down the line.
I'll go with one specific idea.
Sure.
I was, the book I'm working on was not very clearly plotted out from the beginning. I knew what the arc was going to be roughly, but I didn't know what all the story points were going to be. And I knew I was at a point where something really bad needed to happen. And I like to go to real emotions for these sorts of things. And I was sitting there working on the story, and it just, everything seemed like not quite a payoff for what was happening. And at the time I had this very, you mentioned earlier, Travis Bickley kind of roommate. We thought he was clipping his toenails upstairs all the time because we heard this tink, tink, tink noise. Turns out it was a trigger assembly. Tink, tink, tink.
He really does go dark in a lot of these stories.
And so I was thinking, like, and I went into like the emotional state of the villains, how they were relating to each other. And Flynn, my roommate Flynn, don't post this. Don't post this. He was walking by and I was like, Flynn, say there was someone whose just their existence, just by who they were, like just offended the most important thing. And he was like, I was like, what would you do? He's like, I don't know, I guess maybe I'd like cut his arm off. And I was like, oh, okay. And
This is why we're not roommates, by the way.
So, spoilers, at some point someone in the book gets their arm cut off, but I was like, that's perfect. And a lot of the things in my comic come from real life. Scary, scary, bad real life.
Well, that's great, though. I mean, it's, it's a slice of life. I mean, if somebody reading that may know somebody. I mean, it just kind of real quick with me is I like to pull street dialogue from friends who are thug. You know what I mean? So one example is that I found out that another name for heroin is Howard. So they say, yo, you got that, Howard? Now, if a kid who might be a thug or whose older brother or sister, whoever might be a thug, and they hear that and then they read that in a comic book, it kind of touches them in real life. So that's something I kind of like to loop in. And, it's not always a nice thing.
I used to steal crime slang from my students all the time.
There you go. There you go. Bob, culmination of salvages or any ideas specifically?
No, I mean, like I said earlier, I hit some writer's block when I was getting, is it dead? Sorry.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. I hit some writer's block when I was
Take
doing
a break.
salvage.
Thank you, sir.
Came up, I was sitting at a bar basically, and this bar had a TV on without the sound on it. They'd always put different movies on, and they had Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, they'd always do that. So I'm sitting there, and the Death Star blows up in Return of the Jedi, and I'm just, in my mind, I just start thinking, like, who's gonna clean that up? And and I just started writing down on napkins, like I was like, you're gonna have a captain, you gotta have like a demolition guy, you gotta have a tech guy, and I think at one point Salvagers had like 10 crew people, 10 crewmates, and but then when I started conceptualizing the story, I was like, I'm gonna need to break that down, into 4, so I can touch more personally on all characters in a short period of time. So that was I was at a JB Dawson's in Philadelphia when Salvagers hit me.
Cool, right on. Jeff.
The first book I wrote, the first comic I wrote is a book called Indestructible. And the conceit of it is that a guy is mistaken for being a superhero, gets a taste of the lifestyle, likes it, and due to some pressure from his mom and his roommate, decides he's going to try to fake his way through being a superhero. But how do you do that when you have no powers and the villains actually have real powers? And that came, like, for me, ideas come from anywhere. It was probably watching some movie and thinking, it'd be weird if that guy was faking, or maybe just watching the Kardashians and going, they're faking being talented at something. But so for me, ideas come from her, and luckily, before movies and TV, I used to be a newspaper reporter actually. So I can just put myself in a room for a couple of hours and say I have to come up with something in this world and leave with at least a couple of nuggets. But then I have to go take a shower because my best story breaking and problem solving for some reason happens in the shower.
Oh, it's so good.
It's
so good.
There's something about it. I attest to it as well. Like, I've actually taken a shower when I didn't need to try to force an idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sitting there scrubbing, going, I need an idea. Like,
oh, my wife. There's been times my wife's been like, "What are you doing in there?" And like, I'm literally just kind of sitting like in the shower, being like, and it takes forever. You're steamed up, and it's where the best stuff happens.
And you
For me,
pop
it's
out.
taking a walk.
Yeah.
I'll put headphones on and go for a walk.
Yep. A lot of times it is, you can get blocked pretty easily. You can kind of get stuck in where you are. It's change of scenery. It's change. The thing about shower, I think, is it's an absence of all other stimuli in some way, which lets you go to some other places in your brain. But a walk is probably very similar. Chris?
So for me, I kind of touched on it earlier in the vague sense that we wanted to create comics that did not seem to exist anymore. I got sick of waiting for Superman to be lighthearted and inspiring again. I got sick of Hail Hydra. Like, are you kidding me? Now I gotta wait another 10 years before Steve comes cool again.
he was very upset on
Oh my
social
God.
media about Captain America.
Not the only one.
Very, very upset.
Lastly,
I've never seen so much blowback.
There are two people who like entertainment, and the two different kinds of entertainment people like, I found. The first kind are the people who like inspirational, lighthearted stuff. The people who like say, okay, the world is kind of crappy, here's my escapism. So I like looking at Captain America and saying, here's a symbol, it's just pure. And then there are the people who are more cynical, and those are the people who are like, well, I want my entertainment to be realistic, and someone like that would be a panty waste in real life. He wouldn't really exist. So, let's bring him down. Let's show that he's not really that patriotic, and that irritates me because the entire comic industry has been going in that direction. And like I said, the stuff that I enjoy reading has been disappearing, and it's being replaced with this cynical stuff. So the reason that I was so upset about that, as I tried to explain to a friend of mine, was because my entertainment. I entertain myself, removing myself from the crap of the real world by reading something that makes me feel better. So when you turn around and say, okay, well, Captain America was never really that good. See, that kind of altruism doesn't exist. It was a blow to the kind of things that I like, and all it really did was reinvigorate me to get our word out there and be like, hey guys, are you sick of this stuff? Come to HB Comics. But particularly in terms of, I for years have seen the stuff that I like disappearing, so we wanted to create our own. But in terms of specific inspiration, I have two daughters, 9 and 2. Hi Lorelai, hi Ashley. My sister-in-law has 3 girls, all under the age of 12. My sister has a daughter surrounded by girls, and there's nothing out there for them, nothing. And we've always said in HB Comics, one of our ideas never dies; it just kind of gets reused. And I had years ago come up with this team that called 7 Cycle that we're never going to use. It was my attempt at the Teen Titans. Most of our stuff is not an analog for anything else. I don't have like, this is my Superman, this is my Wolverine, whatever. So that idea was a little bit too close to other ideas for us to really move forward with it. But my brother turned around and basically said, well, what if we did a team that was all girls? And there's nothing out there for young girls. So for that,
literally nothing. Bronies took over My Little Pony.
Exactly. And if you want to get a controversy going, we
now.
can talk about, so why are people so pissed about Ghostbusters? I'm sorry, did someone erase every copy of the original one so it's no longer accessible? It doesn't exist?
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the Ghostbusters.
course.
I think it looks great.
Yes.
I think it looks terrible.
But here's the thing, it may look terrible, but you don't have a problem with them making it.
Why didn't they get Tina Fey and Amy Schumer and the funny comedians who are out there? I'm sorry. I have an opinion. I didn't laugh once during the trailer, and I wanted desperately to. And that's
because Ernie Hudson is such a really funny actor.
That's
Ernie Hudson is so funny.
Lovely man, by the way, on one of my shows. Lovely man.
Ghostbusters is a real conflict in the sense of being a fan of the original. You don't want to see that being kind of overlapped or overwritten in any way. But then again, on the other hand, Paul Feig's a great director. Like, The Heat is probably one of the funniest movies I've seen, especially being from Boston.
Here's what I don't understand about that concept. Again, maybe even before home video, when the only access you had to some memory of your childhood was the once a year would pop up on TV during Thanksgiving or something like that, and that was the only access you ever had, then maybe if they're doing a remake, I understand the frustration of, well, you're changing what I know. But everything that's ever existed now is accessible 24/7. Yeah. So if you love the original Ghostbusters, you can watch it all day, every day.
That's true. It's true.
Nothing that happens after it will change that original Ghostbusters. So that's actually, that's where I have the disconnect. And I've done a lot of TV shows based on other properties, from Godzilla to Ghostbusters to Men in Black. And I'm sure there was a very fervent group of like, they're gonna ruin it, they're gonna destroy it. But to me, it's a fan-based extension. You were talking about how you've been so influenced by things you grew up with. And I think we probably, I'm gonna speak for all, I think we all have. I mean, I think you tend to try to reinvent the things that were important to you when you were young. That's actually where your creativity comes from, is an attempt to recreate or better or continue the stories you remember when you're good. I was incredibly influenced by the Monkees. If you watch Monkees and Twilight Zone, if you watch almost any show I've ever done, there's some Twilight Zone thing and there's some Monkees thing in every one of them. Yeah. And the idea that now anybody can kind of extend a story, especially in comic books. I'm going to take this back around. So in comic books, if you grew up with something you love, maybe you can't sell it because you don't own the rights, but you can draw it, you can make it, you can do it, and it doesn't change what came before it. So that's why I have this, I don't quite understand the pushback against reinventing something that will never not exist.
I understand it from a standpoint of you're waiting for a Ghostbusters sequel, and something comes out that doesn't look like it's going to be any good. I understand you guys thought it was funny. I personally, like, the power of Patty compels you. You're hitting the same beats instead of giving something new in the same flavor. Personally, I don't like to disagree, but I think I would find it more palpable if they said, okay, we're 20 years later after the original Ghostbusters have retired, keep it in the same continuity. But comic book geeks in particular, and pop culture in general, they like the idea of continuity. So when this comes in and it's a reboot, in their mind it is displacing the original, because now in the currently accepted continuity, these are the original Ghostbusters, and people have a tough time with that. I think if they had just gone in there and said, okay, the original Ghostbusters happened, but here's, they pick up a franchise and there's these four girls who are in there, I think it would be more well received. And I actually don't know if I'm going to go in this direction, but hell, I'm just going to throw it out there. The idea that you cannot criticize it because, and this has been thrown at me a lot, I'm constantly having to deflect whenever I've talked about this online, the allegation that I don't like it because it's women, which is totally untrue. Like I said, I would have chosen maybe different women. I don't see the need to say, okay, there have to be 4 women. I wouldn't see a problem with mixing it up.
Understand you're throwing your comments into a super venomous, super destructive, nightmare, Fury Road hellscape.
I'm glad that it's on your live feed now and it's off my live feed.
Yeah, because I don't mean your comments right now. I mean,
no.
I'm guessing the people who are coming back at your comments and saying you can't do that are they're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder from talking about Ghostbusters on the internet.
It's a fair point.
And let's be clear, nobody's seen the movie.
Yeah, no.
That's kind of the key.
Yeah.
I've seen bad trailers for good movies. My guess is it's not the kind of humor that I enjoy, so I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm not going to go on a venomous tirade. All I've ever said when anyone's talked about it is, I don't think it looks funny. And I had a very logical conversation with someone online where I was basically saying, well, I'm sorry. I literally went through every joke in the trailer and was like, the only one that I thought was kind of funny was the...
And that was the Ghostbusters panel, everybody. Yeah, we're pressed for time, so I kind of want to move on from this. Indie comics, people, indie comics.
Yeah.
So I got through half of this list, and time's tight, but I just want to throw it out. Does anybody have any questions?
About how how long did it take from when the idea started to where you are now? Like the year span?
20 years.
Short.
Forever.
So 20 years.
20
That's the standard,
years.
right? 20
Yeah,
years.
I know Bob mentioned a few years, but.
I mean,
So-
it took me from concept, though. I started conceptualizing this in 2002, and I didn't print it until 2012.
Wow.
So it took me 10 years to write down on a napkin and then find an artist. Facebook wasn't out there when I started conceptualizing it. So finding an artist was just so foreign to me. I had no idea. Now, I can find an artist in 10 minutes if you give me my phone back. You know, but it's also as you start creating and you start,
No, I didn't.
as you start going into the industry and you start doing things, artists now, if you're nobody and you haven't done anything, artists aren't, they're gonna be more, you know, they're more apprehensive to work with you. But once you start doing things and you start putting stuff out there, artists are gonna come to you saying, do you have any scripts that you're working on, or do you have anything that, you know, and it's so much easier. But when you're just breaking in, it's so hard to find somebody, to nail them down, to even find an artist where in the visualizing what you want it to look like, finding an artist that fits that visual, you know, it's tough to do. So it could take a long time, but hopefully now with social media, it's not going to take
It's a lot
anybody
easier,
10
but it's still
years.
super hard.
Although I will take the other side of that, which is our window. So from the time we have a finished script, which can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years, depending, we allow for about 3 months to turn it around into a comic book. So it's about 3 months from finished script starting to get thumbnail sketches to delivering to stores.
I don't know if it'll show up
Production.
on
That's
the
the
live
concept
feed.
thing, though.
Right, that's
But when he said 3 months from script to print, you might have noticed all the rest of us just suddenly glower with hate.
That is actually where it should be.
Yeah.
And it's tough to keep that to there. And again, like I'm working with an artist right now who has a full-time job, so it's taking longer. But yes, I think 3 months is what it should take.
When you share your creativity with 40 hours a week somewhere else, it's really tough to stay on a schedule like Jeff has. You know, as a matter of fact, if you want, come on up, grab a few prizes for asking a question.
Oh.
Feel free, grab a copy of Sartana, and
Okay,
here's a Clark and 5 button.
Well, because I was gonna say I've got Laser Man, I've got Rapid City.
Okay,
so,
yeah, feel free.
Thank
And
you.
if you're watching on the live feed, hashtag NECC Indie Panel will retroactively send out prizes for you.
Right there. That's the whole story right there that you just had your
Okay,
hand
so I was
on.
looking for one, and you
Yeah,
only have
that's
2
all
and
4
3.
right
Yeah.
there.
All right, so I'll start with this.
Wow,
one.
you
You
gave
guys
away
can
2
do it.
AIDS as a
Hey,
wow.
unfortunately, I don't have a table here, so I got to give something away. Don't worry,
Oh, so
Jeff.
there
I got
you
one
go.
with your
Now I
name on
can't
it.
find you. So I have
Any other questions out there? Questions from anybody?
What is your favorite social media outlet to kind of spread news about your projects? And how do you go about using it?
Facebook, I feel like
Facebook.
Facebook is my favorite. Facebook has algorithms that you post something and it's not going to be, everybody's going to see it within 15 minutes and then it's gone. Facebook, you can post something and then, hours later it might show up in somebody else's feed. Where Twitter is, they say Twitter has a 15-minute lifespan and then it's dead.
Facebook, you can go a little deeper with the content. You can engage a little better. You can put something up there and come back to it a week later and refresh it a little bit. Facebook lives out there a little bit more than Twitter.
Yeah, it's a living, breathing organism, basically. I mean, you can post something, and weeks later, somebody might comment on it, and it's almost like it starts going in people's feeds all over again.
But you also can't discount Kickstarter as a social media platform.
Bingo,
Because
yes.
we're using that, there is a way that you can communicate their messages. So in its own way, that kind of ends up being the selling, I think, social media platform of choice, whereas Facebook is the general promotion.
Kickstarter is like the movie trailers of comic books, essentially. That's where you go and you find your previews.
Anybody
The way
use
it was
Snapchat?
Diamond before, it's now Kickstarter.
No.
Any of the other ones?
Snapchat,
We're all a
Instagram.
certain
Yeah, we
age.
don't want to
Yeah.
see.
By the way, so Facebook was probably the answer you expected from us.
Yeah.
If you talk to my 12-year-old daughter,
MySpace,
Darby,
used that for years.
A lot of
Yes.
people-
Thank God I didn't hear
Instagram.
MySpace. Jeez.
Bob does some really great stuff
DeviantArt?
on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook are my favorites. Twitter is like one of those things where you've got a drink in you and you're like, I'm gonna try Twitter again. and then you realize you're like, this was useless.
Why did I do that?
Yeah, Twitter is like for CNN and.
Just don't drink and tweet, guys. Just
Yeah.
don't.
But by the way, I want to bring this back around in some way.
Sure.
So we do a lot of work on our website and on Facebook and on Tumblr and Twitter and all the rest of it. Nothing is better for us than face-to-face at a con.
Absolutely.
Quite honestly, that is, we sell more books, we have more conversation, we more people, we make more of an impact. There's nothing like being able to tell somebody in person in a couple of lines what your book is about and to display a certain level of passion you have for it. So this kind of thing, whether it's cons of this size or New York Con or Emerald City or much smaller, this is actually the lifeblood of the independent comic book business. It really is.
For the creator and the fan.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It goes
Comic
both
book
ways that way.
conventions are the original social media network.
Yeah.
Wow.
Any other questions? Oh, grab a prize before you leave. Any other questions out there? Anything?
Well, I'm curious about what your full-time jobs are if you're not doing this.
Oh,
That's fair.
I'll start. I have a 40-hour-a-week job. I work for TomTom Telematics. It's the business division of TomTom, the GPS company. I'm lucky to have that job because it pays for making comics. Because I'm actually on the other side of I don't do crowdsourcing. I try not to do Kickstarter. I've done a few T-shirt campaigns where I design a T-shirt and whatever money I get from that I put towards comics. But I really try to go more towards and this was one of the things I missed on this card. I didn't get to it, but I go more for the collaboration. I work with an artist for free up front because it kind of shows dedication on their part as well to work for free and to do it for free up front, because then they'll trust in me that I have the hustle to bring their work to other people, and it's kind of like a mutual thing. I usually for issue 1, Joe Crow art, Joe Arnold art, and Chris Lirio, all 3 of my artists who work on my books currently. Issue 1 free up front, issue 2, and going forward we try to work out revenue that comes from retail at shows, and then maybe some type of other thing and some type of arrangement. But I always try to encourage that people getting started work for free, because who are you at this point? We're not all Jeff Klein or Bob Sally.
Whoa.
You know what I mean?
I'm
You should
certainly
thank
not.
your lucky stars every day.
Or Chris or Josh for that matter. So,
I,
regular job.
I'm a ramp safety coordinator for British Airways. So I do like standard check-in, standard immigration and customs, but I also I actually inspect the aircrafts and make sure that cargo is stowed so that everybody's safe when they take off.
Chris keeps us safe.
Thank you.
I write and produce for television.
I work in facilities management for a tech firm.
For 10 years, I worked as a teacher in a juvenile detention facility here in Boston, and then I quit because teaching is a terrible job. And now I substitute teach, and
You don't want to hashtag that?
That seems like
Teaching
it's
is terrible
going
job.
lower, but it's
Disrespect.
actually going up.
Teachers, I'm sure.
no, teachers are great. I love teachers.
Teachers are
Teaching
great
is a
because
terrible
they do
job.
the
And
horrible
but
job.
that's a respectable job though, man. So
And so now that summer's coming up, if any of you are hiring or need anything,
He's looking to get back
we'll
into
make
this.
comics.
Hashtag
food.
hire Josh Dahl.
well, whatever. I'm good.
Any other questions out there?
What do you think of more of the comics going more just digital and not just paper anymore?
So I'll
Comics
start.
are going to become like vinyl, where everybody just downloads their music, but some people who really love it in a special way will go to weird little stores and buy paper copies. And that's tother cool.
One other thing about the publisher that me and Bob are both affiliated with, Think Alike Productions, they're strictly. Well, and Josh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're Think Alike as well. My bad,
Yes,
man.
not.
My bad. Yeah, we're all Think Alike, and they're primarily digital. It's up to us to get the print copies.
But I'm going to take a different tack at this, which is for all the talk about how much digital has been driving comic books, it's still a very tiny percentage of the monthly sales in the comic book industry.
Yeah.
It's an outlet for those who can't afford to publish, absolutely, and it's a great outlet for that. And it's a great, for us, we tend to use it almost more as a promotional tool. If you check out on issue number 1 on Comixology for 99 cents, then maybe you'll buy the trade when we drop that. But as a percentage of sales, digital is still very, very small.
Come by my table right now for a free digital copy of Rapid City Below Zero #1.
Not right now because he's here.
Not right now. Not right now.
When will that
They're
be
all
now?
leaving.
Soon. All right, so I'm getting go
I
on,
was
Bob.
just gonna say, with digital, it gives you an opportunity to spread your series worldwide, where people, if you can't ship to Australia, I see in my Comixology sales, Australia, Germany, like all over the world. So it's great to get it out further than just the United States. But yeah, I mean, the digital sales aren't that great. They're not that big. I put my issue 1 and issue 2 on an issue website that you can flip through, and it's on Salvagers on Facebook. You can download it, or you can look at it, issue 1 and 2 for free. Hopefully it'll get you to go to Comixology or to go to my online store to get the rest of it, but it's yeah, it's a great way to spread it. Is more for Comixology.
The other thing to keep an eye on from a digital perspective is there's going to be more sites that are the subscription model, where you basically pay one price and download as much as you want. That's going to be really interesting because for music business, it's been horrible for most artists.
Yeah.
It's been terrible, the little tiny percentage they get. And my fear is that may be true for comic book creators as well, if in fact the industry switches to more of a subscription model. I don't know.
I think it'll do what you were saying, where for those artists, they make their money at concerts.
Right.
For
Yes,
a subscription model,
and
we'll
with
make
and
their money at
merchandise. They
conventions.
make their money on T-shirts.
Conventions.
Yep.
Plus, there's nothing like the feeling that you own something, like actually having it in your hand. I mean, I could have a hard drive wipe that completely takes everything, every comic I own out. I could potentially, I could lose my password to Powfolio or Comixology, and you're only streaming it from that anyway, so you never actually own it. You're basically, you basically pay for permission to view off of their servers. So it's a good analogy I'll use. It's like if you are someone who collects action figures inside the box, you never take them out and play with them. Would you rather have the action figure sitting on your shelf in its box, or would you rather have a picture of it on your computer?
So we got to wrap it up. I'm getting the evil eye from the back of the room. Let's just go down the line one more time and pimp ourselves and our product.
Josh Dahl, Rapid City Below Zero. It's belowzerocomic.com, facebook.com/Rapid City Comic. You guys know how to use Google. Josh Dahl, Rapid City Below Zero.
Google Bob Sally. You can find me on Facebook. It's just easy as that. Just Google. Bob Sally, writer of the Salvager series. If you go to Facebook or Instagram, put in Salvager series, you'll see a little black and white logo, and we're always giving away stuff and just trying to build the fan base.
Jeff Klein, Darby Pop Publishing. We're downstairs, a couple of tables, so come visit us down there. We run special pricing for cons. Russell Bretholtz is there right now, who wrote Sidekick, the book I mentioned. So he'll be here today, signing if you would like a copy of Sidekick. And we're at www.darbypop.com.
Chris Hebert, HB Comics. Honestly, the best place to follow us is facebook.com/HB Comics, or join the HB Comics group on Facebook, because you get our updates actually a little bit cleaner that way. We publish Laserman, Vindication, Team Synergy, Mystery Man, Landslide, Legion of Justice. We have we're a creator-owned studio. Come check us out.
And I've been your host and moderator. My name is Johnny C. I'm a writer for Sartana, Surrounded by Death, and Clark and Five. I also run a movie preview page on Facebook. It's just a movie site if you like to talk movies and TV and stuff like that. I'm also downstairs, so if you want to scoop a copy of Sartana, if you want a free Clark and Five button, come see me. Make sure if any of these guys are here on the floor, come visit them. If you have any other questions, I'm sorry our time was short. I wish we could sit here all day and talk, because we probably could. But
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, about Ghostbusters. Yeah.
Sorry.
I just want to thank everybody for coming, and if you could, round of applause for these guys right here.
Woo!
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of the show.
And that's it for the indie comic panel.
Yeah, I got mine. Thank you.
Kelly, grab one of each thing.